I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 4 p.m. This is the City of Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission, the regular meeting for September 22nd, 2021. We will go ahead and start with roll call. Please indicate if you are present. Mark Nelson.
Present.
Steve Corey, here. Scott Walters.
Here.
Sean Keating. Meg Larson.
Here.
Karen Richmond.
Here.
Ren Spivak.
Here.
Tom Otte.
Here.
We'll move on with the ex officio members. Rochelle Klein.
Here.
And Councilor Liz Strader.
Here.
Quorum being present, we will go ahead and start with business. I'm going to go ahead and say two things. Thank you for those of you who have contacted Sayard or myself to go ahead and identify whether you would be present virtually or if you were not going to be in attendance. It's very helpful for the city. If we know that you have a conflict or something like that, then that gets recorded and we don't go down the path of worrying about about your attendance. And then also I want to go ahead and just recognize, of course, our current condition with COVID. Certainly Meridian and myself promote virtual attendance. It's very supported at this time. So you should feel very comfortable if that's your preference that you'd like to connect to these meetings virtually, please continue to do it or do it. With that, we'll start moving into the business. The first item on is adoption of the agenda. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. Are there any comments on the draft agenda?
Mr. Chair, no comments. This is Meg Larson. I would just move approval of the agenda as written.
Second.
No, a second.
It's been moved and seconded that the draft agenda be approved as written. Further comments? Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving the draft agenda as written signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 25 meeting. The draft minutes have been sent to you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. Is there comments?
Mr. Chair, no comments, but I would move approval of the August 25th meeting minutes as written.
It's been moved and seconded that the draft minutes for the August 25 meeting be approved as written. Is there further comment? Any comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving the draft minutes for August 25th meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is community acknowledgement. I don't have anything under that at this point, so we'll move into program reports. And the first item under program reports is the Republic Services Quarterly Report. Joanna, I believe you're going to go ahead and give us that presentation.
I am making sure my mic is on. Good afternoon. For the quarterly report, this is actually the third quarter that we'll be presenting, which is June, July, and August. The fourth quarter is almost done, but not quite. So we couldn't include it in this report. All right. So the first information that is provided is the population and house counts. There is a note that the census information was released and we updated our population estimate to be 117,635, which is approximately 10,000 less than we were estimating previously. Still growing very fast. And you can see here's our residential trash tons per year. And interesting with the numbers, we did see a drop in this June compared to the last 2 years. And the numbers have been double checked, and I'm not sure what might have caused that. I was going to ask Rochelle if she had any comments.
Mr. Chairman and SWAC commissioners, 2020 is no surprise to any of us for residential trash tons, just because with COVID, that was right when we were all kind of locked down and people were still purging and cleaning, and it was novel to be at home and doing that. So we kind of expected, we went into kind of a stay-at-home order in the kind of the middle to end of March, and that April, May, June timeframe was really high for residential tons. So, but it is surprising that it dropped as much as it did. And I don't know what would drive that. It'd be interesting to see if the recycling tons made up the difference.
Oh, actually, that's the next page. Thank you. So, no, we saw a decrease in recycling as well. So I'm not sure where everything's going.
So, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and Joanna, I think these are encouraging numbers, frankly, because waste reduction is always our target versus just recycling more. And so I don't know, that's a pretty significant drop. So it's not bad that we saw the number of recycling tons drop. Looks like people were just generating less overall, which is certainly the goal. I mean, the numbers are pretty accurate just because everything is run through the transfer station. So it's just Meridian tons. So it's pretty easy to segregate those out. And then for recycling, these all just go to Western Recycling on routes that are just Meridian only routes. So the numbers are accurate. I'm glad you rechecked them. I don't know what would cause a drop like that, to be honest.
Mr. Chair?
I believe a question was.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Tom Audi.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
We've actually seen a slight increase in tons at the landfill. So these numbers are rather surprising from the post-collection side of things. I'd definitely like to dig into them a little more. If Rochelle, you don't mind, it's a little bit surprising from our end.
Sure. Yeah, Commissioner Audi, I'm happy to work on this with you offline if we want to go back and look at the data again.
I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
We go into the commercial after this, right? I mean, commercial and industrial. And my curiosity is if the commercial and industrial went up when the households went down because of people going back to work.
We don't have commercial reflected in this report, but I was just going to mention that there was a lot of people that moved from working from home to back to work at June when school ended. And they weren't asked to be an at-home teacher anymore, and those programs changed. And I'm wondering if we saw an increase in commercial.
Mr. Chair,
Sounds like a good line of inquiry. Thank you. Continue.
Meg, did you say something?
oh, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chair, just looking 2021 compared to 2019, I mean, you would expect to see the drop compared to 2020 for the reasons that Rochelle described, people being at home and taking advantage of that time to do some cleanup. But the June numbers really just look peculiar compared to 2 years ago, compared to the prior month. And with Tom's comment that landfill amounts have actually gone up, it's a peculiar thing, I think. And so I'll be interested in what Tom and Rochelle find.
We'll definitely further look into those numbers, and we'll see where the trends go in July as well. So this is a positive trend that we are seeing a more recycle, which is good. And I believe on the next slide, I did put together a comparison of the household trash per pound or pound per household versus recycle. And the recycle is fairly flat, where we are definitely seeing a roller coaster ride for residential trash. I think we can see some of the large dips and rises we can attribute to COVID. But it'd be interesting to see if we,
Some of our seasonal.
well, this is from 2018.
Oh,
Mr. Chair, Joanna,
Yes.
I'm just a tiny bit confused. Can you go back a couple of slides? Okay, so residential, maybe one more. There we go. Trash per, okay, thank you. And then the recycle, advance one more. Oh, no, back up. It's okay, so trash goes down. Okay, thank you. I was just a little bit confused. I'm good. Thank you.
I did add this slide. This speaks to the market labor adjustment that was requested. We saw a large increase of missed pickups started in May and escalated in July, which was the height of Republic was implementing that difference and increasing their staffing and getting into training. And you will see when we do our next update, there was a dramatic decrease in missed pickups moving forward from July. We are also seeing a large jump in subscription services for grass, which is great, the highest that we've seen. It does tend to speak to the trend that we've had in 2021. It's just been growing, which is speaks of the interest in composting that the citizens have as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Spivak.
just a comment. One of the reasons I think there's an increase for missed households is that for 4 or 5 years, at least in our neighborhood, recycle came around 1 o'clock and trash collection came later. Now it's flip-flop. The trash collection is in the morning and the recycle is later. And there were a lot of folks who would roll their garbage cans out later in the morning because they knew it wasn't coming till the afternoon. And that's maybe part of the misses. I know they're supposed to be out 7 o'clock in the morning, but after years of having afternoon pickup, I think it caught us off guard.
Mr. Chair, I have just a comment also along those lines that I also think that people don't read the pickup service, the information sheet comes in the beginning of the year. For example, like on Labor Day, it was pushed back a date. So people don't read that and they think that it's coming, and then they pull their bins back and then they put them out the next day and then they pull them back. So they get a little confused because they're just not paying attention to the information given.
Good comments.
Chair, I have a comment too. I think with more outreach, we might be able to help reduce those confusions, maybe even send out something more than once a year on that.
And Mr. Chair, we definitely saw a combination of many different reasons. I will say personally from what the calls that the city was experiencing was there were a lot of routes that just weren't able to happen because there just wasn't the staff to man the routes. So we did have routes that were just missed, and it would start with a holiday, specifically at the end of May, that it was hard to keep up for Republic. And when they did manage to get the staff hired, we saw a correlating decrease in the missed pickups. But I think an effort to increase our communication will also assist. And then we have our glass accounts. And again, they're following the same trend and increasing. And that's it for the quarterly update. Do we have any questions?
Joanna, can you go back one slide, please? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Joanna, I would just ask if it's possible to send the slides out via email.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair,
Councilwoman.
just a comment. Love seeing the increase in grass, and just makes me think that that interest in composting is just going up and up. Maybe future topic to revisit that conversation and what the options are. Just a suggestion.
Noted, and we'll get that on a future meeting. Further comments or questions on the information that's been presented?
I just wanted to, Mr. Chair, I just want to make a comment. I have a grass bin and I love having it, but my neighbors are even a little confused because they think that they have one of the big green bins that it's different looking than mine. Mine has like a bright green on the top and theirs has is completely different. So they think that that is part of the grass service. And they thought that, you know, it just showed up when they moved in type of thing. And I told them, no, you have to actually have that, order that.
Rochelle, do you want to comment to that?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And yes, the grass only carts, it may have been that we always say the carts stay with the house. So if someone moved out that had grass service and then someone moved in and the cart was still there, we should have gone out to get that grass subscription cart. So if it was left on site, we do ask that people not move and take their carts with them, because then we see a pileup of carts at one house and no carts at the other. So that is something that we'll have to, when people are moving and leaving a house, we'll have to make sure that we say, leave your trash and recycling carts on site. And if there are additional carts, we'll have to schedule those for a bring in. That'll hopefully minimize confusion. And we have changed cart vendors too. So some of the colors are a little bit different, but they should all be, you know, roughly the same. But I know, you know, some of the colors do vary a bit based on the manufacturers that we're getting carts from. But that's a really good point, and I'll work with customer service on making sure if there are any subscription carts like glass or grass that we go get those.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Spivak.
I'm assuming that when homes are sold, whether they're a current resident or a new resident, the minute that billing is notified of a change of name, does Republic have access to that database? So that that may be a key to send out when there's a name change, just a email or information sheet stating, here are the pickup dates, here are the 3 types of cans. If you find you have these are the ones that if you're not using the grasses, we can pick it up. If you'd like to have it, we can deliver. That would be a good way to get to new residents or a former resident who has moved.
Mr. Chair, Fran. We are working on a new resident packet that will automatically be sent to new residents that are triggered from MUBs receiving the information of a new resident. And all of this information will be included. It's a great comment, and we do think that that's a need that we have to address.
Great, you're way ahead of me then, great.
Further comments or questions? Thank you. I know we're going to be looking forward to a follow-up report on the rate of collection. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is the Republic fiscal year 2022 rate update. Sayard, you want to start with that? Catch the commission up on what's been happening there?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about this. I don't have a PowerPoint for this one. But last week, it was amended that we'll have a one-time labor adjustment of 11 cents on the residential. And it will go for the full fiscal year 2020. And when it gets close to fiscal year 23, that will be assessed to see, do we continue it, discontinue it, put in the base rate. So there'll be a conversation around that time to see what to do next.
So if you didn't catch that, the subject was, and the public hearings ended last Tuesday, but the council went ahead and adjusted the wording of the ordinance, and the labor adjustment is set up for FY 2021, and that's just a one-year change for right now. But anyway, if you have questions about the information that's been presented, now would be a great time to go ahead and ask them. Very good. We'll go ahead and move on to the old business. And the first item under the old business was the continued item for the CFR grant planning. Sayard?
This will be a PowerPoint, so let me share my screen. Okay. So the Community Recycle Fund, the grant portion of that, we were talking about that last time. And my suggestions are to basically wait and put this on hold until next year calendar year, where we can start talking about it again. And that will give us time to better. Three main reasons why: timing, it runs October to October, and we only have one more SWAC meeting left, and we haven't done much outreach or completed the research about the previous grants yet. And then that runs into outreach. That will give us more time to put the word out, as Tom was talking about in our last meeting. And then hopefully in the spring, springtime, we can get the word out. Summertime, get applicants, and then in September, have time to review them, September announce it, and then get the ball rolling in October of 2020. And then also it would give us a chance to kind of streamline the process and better define parameters of who can actually ask to get a grant or not. For example, can a business ask for a grant if it's public facing? I'm not sure about that. So that might be something that that you guys discuss and we can figure that out. And then is there any questions before I move on to the next CFR topic?
Members of the commission, do you have any questions or comments on what Sayard has just presented?
Mr. Chair, this is Megan. Sayard sent out an email about this to us as well, and I support postponing the program until we can kind of follow the fiscal year and have plenty of time to promote it and so forth. Just the timing piece on updating the criteria, changing some of the language so it's more clear who can apply, providing more information to applicants about the timeline, those kinds of things. When do you anticipate that happening? Is that something that SWAC would need to approve? The actual language of the grant program, I'm thinking if we would promote in the springtime, then that would need to come before SWAC in January, February, or something like that. Is that what you're thinking, or?
Council, yeah, I was thinking January, the off season in the winter time. Hopefully we can get that all done. And then, I could come to you during, next meeting, not this next meeting, but a January, February one, with some of that new language. And then we can hash out how we want it going forward. And I guess I asked for you to kind of, kind of be on your radar and think about, especially when you're walking around town, like, who do you want to be able to access these grants? For example, I was out Walmart, and there's several other grocery stores that you can drop off your plastic bags to get recycled. However, this one, it was kind of confusing because there was no signage. When I got close to the container where residents can drop off their bags, I saw it in Sharpie. So is that a potential applicant that can help make things be more robust and help the community out? Or is it just for, public only entities? Just food for thought on that.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, no, I agree. So I just wanted to clarify the timeline. And then also, I think in the materials that I looked at, it wasn't clear like about the approximate size of the grants or the total budget available, just to give folks a sense of, what size project we're able to fund / looking to fund. I think that would be helpful information to include as well for potential applicants. The total pool available is X dollars, grants would be awarded between 500 and 5,000 or whatever it is that we determine it should be. I think that would be helpful information to include as well. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, also may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners and Sayard, also in the past, we had other commissions apply for grants, like the Arts Commission applied for a grant. And I don't know if we want to makes, any of the city entities a priority, or if we want to just have everybody on equal footing. But I know we did collaborate with I guess it was the Library Foundation, or the library, and then district, and then the Arts Commission. And so we had some city entities applying for grants. And I don't know, maybe we can identify if we want city entities to be a priority over the community, or if we want just everybody to be a fruit bowl.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
And Michelle, I think that it would be beneficial for SWAC to decide what is the objective of using these funds. And then you can determine what the best applicant for that would be. So if you decide, if it is, it has to be recycling, and you want to have the community have more resources, or have businesses have more options, or whichever the goal is. I think that needs to be decided first, and then you can start to build the parameters of how you're going to use those funds.
Thank you, Joanna.
Mr. Chair, I just had a comment in regards to what Rochelle was saying. Perhaps if we considered maybe having categories like, well, for example, what she just mentioned about the city, maybe we have a category that pertains to the city, a category that pertains to the community, a category, and so much funds are available for the city, so much for the different categories. Just a thought.
Mr. Chair. I've always thought of the fund as giving back to the community. So that's where I stand on that. I don't care if it's a business or whatever, we're giving back to the community. How does it benefit the community?
And then, Mr. Chair, for my next slides, besides the grant, I can talk about just other ideas that I've been a part of or know about that, maybe a portion of the funding is for the grant and the other portion is for these other options. So with that, I'll go into the other portion of the.
If I may, members of the commission, did you have any further questions or comments on the initial part of this presentation?
Just a process question, Mr. Chair. So it sounds like Sayard is planning to perhaps flesh out a proposal and bring that before SWAC in January, February with, some of these pieces outlined, or is SWAC providing impact on that? I'm just trying to get to what's the next step in the process so we can, because the decision timeframe is really not that long if we're going to promote in the spring. So are you looking for help from SWAC on that, or is that, how would you like to proceed?
Chair, yeah, I guess what kind of echoing what Joanna was saying, I don't know if we can at least just tackle one thing is kind of, have an overall vision of what you want these funds to do. Walters, he talked about, what he envisions this. So if there's some main goal, and then I can take that and then flesh out more of the details. And then in January, February, come back to the table with a proposal outline of what we would want to move forward in the springtime with.
So I would say where we're at right now is if the commission, if there was a motion made that there was a particular objective to be taken, we would debate it, and there was agreement by the commission, that would be fine. But it would also be fine if we wanted to continue this for people to consider that too. But as the Solid Waste Advisory Commission, it would be our recommendation on what needs to go on, and that can either be handled at this meeting or next meeting. But I know staff would like to go ahead and get some advice before they start sharpening the pencil and filling in the details. Further questions or comments on the portion of the presentation that we've already seen?
Mr. Chair.
Rhonda.
I will say Sayard has some great ideas for alternative uses, not to exclude a grant, but alternative uses. And I think it would help to present those ideas as the spectrum of what the funds could be used for. And then I think the committee can then debate what they would decide would be the best route. Not necessarily decide a specific answer, but at least a direction or an objective of where they'd like to go.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Councilwoman.
Is it, because it's a community recycling fund, does it have to center around recycling, or could it also be used for waste reduction?
we should never be a slave of history. We should be willing to go ahead and look at new options and do different things. That being said, the program in the past has provided grants that either created something of substance that was predominantly produced by using recycled materials to go ahead and show people a way to use materials or to encourage people to recycle. Again, your suggestion of highlighting diversion of waste so that it doesn't end up at the landfill is certainly along those lines. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just curious if I love the idea of seeing suggestions. I don't think we can ever go wrong seeing a bunch of suggestions as well as opening it up to the community. But I'm a non-voting member, but just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
And having the benefit of seeing what's coming up in the show and tell portion of this thing, I understand the fact that some of these might go ahead and affect what you're thinking on this. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and move on with the rest of the presentation, recognizing that once that's done, if you have something associated with the first portion of this, the grant planning, or on the options discussion, those will still be in order to have both those comments. So with that, Sayard, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you to continue the presentation.
Here are some other options that I was thinking about. So most of these are just pictures, and I'll kind of explain. This is kind of high level, so I don't have the nitty gritty right now of how much funds it would take to develop this. One thing, actually, when I was in St. Paul, what we did was a story stroll, and what we did is explain what happened when you put a plastic bag in the recycle cart. So you kind of walk along, and these are usually in parks, so we would work with parks to put these up, and they're temporary. We can move them around, and it kind of just tells the story of, there's one that was kind of a cartoon more for children, and then we had one, the 3 panels down below, that was more adult oriented. And these are just some snapshots of 3 panels, basically says, put a bag in the cart, the hauler picks it up, and then I think this is actually Republic Services, Murph. Basically these bags and other called tanglers, long cords, get stretched around the stars, and the whole MRF has to shut down, and workers, which is dangerous, have to cut this stuff out. So it kind of explains and shows your actions and what happens. Another example to the upper left would be kind of, when you do recycle, what does your stuff turn into? That can even be a story that we develop and put out into the community. One thing is reduce contamination campaign. And this was something that we did actually with Minneapolis. This was after doing a audit of the recycling MRF. And we basically did audit of what are the main contaminants that St. Paul residents, the community, are putting in the recycling. And the main 3 ones were obviously plastic bags, but scrap metal, and then bulky plastic items. Because usually don't want anything over 3 gallons. So with that, we developed these. It was on the metro, it was on billboards, and it was, recycle smart, don't put these things in your cart kind of campaign. And then that's what it looked like on the left, and on the right, that were every 2 weeks, we would put information on the website, and it was just different information like that, depending on, time of year. Summertime, you don't want to you don't want to recycle your picnics, non-reusable stuff that wants to be in the trash. And then actually after the campaign, we did another audit of the MRF to see if actually our campaign worked, and it was a reduction, especially in the scrap metal. Another thing, and actually behind Steve, I have some examples if people here want to look at an annual guide, a physical annual guide. This one is for single family homes, garbage and recycling service, but we also did one for multi-family homes. And so this is what it looks like on the front. And it actually also showcases how far apart you should put your cart. So there's a lot of subliminal messages here. And then here are just 3 snapshots on the right of different pages. Recycle guide, kind of a picture and explaining what you can and can't put in your cart. Residential yard waste. And then the third one are what Strader was talking about, reduction, kind of just talking about different ways to, different services out there, e-waste, medical waste, and what to do with it. So we would send this out once a year, and a lot of people liked it. We would always get calls after, mailing it out, kind of, and it's a guide to all different types of stuff, waste related. Another option is to do a low waste event, and this can be something as small as you can see a graduation party to something, something in the park, like a community event or something that even the city is putting on. And these containers are called clear streams. You can clearly see what's in them. There's 3 different sizes. I ran this program for St. Paul, and anybody could call, and we loan these out, the whole thing, and you can have the option of creating your own signage. And then the resident or business, the thing that they had to obviously return these, and then they would have to deal with disposing of the trash, recycling, compost, bringing it to the transfer station, or we had actually places around town that you could drop off compost, but they were in charge of that, but they got these loaned items out, and it was pretty successful. Another issue or thing that we could tackle, noticing as I go for walks downtown, is our recycling containers, I've noticed, are often full of contamination, so end up having to be dumped as trash. So how can we maybe improve the stream? One way, unfortunately, I couldn't find any pictures of a rectangle shape, but baffles or something to constrict what you put in it, and maybe just focusing on containers. Because most people walking down the street probably aren't going to have a box or a piece of paper that they're going to recycle. And then also, if you notice, there's on one side there's pictures, but on the other side it's kind of all black. So maybe, I'm not sure if anybody knows where these came from, if they're city owned or Republic Services owns them. Yeah, the actual cans.
Sorry.
No, they were a MIAC project. MIAC
Yes.
was the one that put them out there. And then
Yep.
we did something around signage not that long ago.
Yeah, and didn't we use community recycling funds? Jody St. Martin requested community recycling funds from MIAC to pay for those graphics.
I thought it was their thing where they get to do a project each year. They get a certain amount of money in the city budget. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then that was the project they chose for that particular year.
So the city owns the cans, recycling and trash, and then MIAC made the graphics that are currently on there, and then they're part of the city's donated services from Republic. So we come by, and the problem has historically been the recycling people come and they won't dump the recycling carts because they have trash in them. Then we have to call in a trash dump behind them. So we are encouraged by your interest in cleaning them up.
And then also, you know, maybe even moving some of these containers and putting them next. This is a picture actually walking right outside of City Hall steps. There really isn't actually any recycling out in the main pedestrian area. You kind of have to get to the street. So that might be something that you guys consider as well. This is just something, you know, adopting a container, maybe a business owner near can adopt a pair and kind of help keep it clean. And, you know, maybe we can put their logo on there or not. That's just might be some option. Because right now when I walk by the Bedfords, that's the trash, you know, that's unlocked. So unless someone calls, that you won't know that it's messed up unless someone walks by. So just kind of helping, you know, maintain our program could be an option. Another thing could be, and I kind of talked about this, about the Walmart example, is plastic film, aka plastic bags, you know, the stretchy stuff. How can we capture that? And then, you know, help them turn into something different. Trex, you know, the wood company uses a lot of recycled plastic bags to produce their materials. And they have different programs throughout the nation. And an example that I've seen at other stores is on the far right is a container where you collect, and these are usually at grocery stores, that you collect the plastic bags, but it's nice that it actually shows you what it will turn into. So it kind of helps complete your mental circle of what's going on. And then in the middle is a school challenge that RAP, the Recycling Action Program, has started. So I guess the funds potentially would be helping out grocery stores to maybe, buy or put signage up, or these bins to collect the plastic bags. That's where I guess our help would come in this potential opportunity. Outreach as well. And then here, me are dear to my heart, what I worked on. That's what I look like without a mask on the left. So this is, on the left is the apartment guide, and it's a little bit not as meaty as the single family home guide, because there's some stuff that apartment buildings aren't able to work with. And here I'm pictured basically example behind Steve, the example, these are called totes. And we actually gave these out to apartment unit dwellers to help encourage them to recycle. So you can either get a bag or a tote. I've referred to totes because then I encourage the owner of the building to keep the tote with the building, kind of like the same concept of keep the cart with the home. And yeah, you can, you know, and encourage not using plastic bags. And the tote, actually a paper bag, fits into it pretty well. And then in the middle is the outreach. That's below is a poster that we developed to put out, and it kind of pictorial explains how to process, how to, you know, recycle your things. And then down below is more text. And then on the right is an example of a place that I worked with. I think this is a call from a tenant requesting help. Oh no, it was a hauler not able to pick up the material because there was a lot of trash in front of the cart. So in February, I went out, the top picture, and that's what I was presented with. And then it took a while, but in May, the second picture down below is the new and improved site, more signage. On the left-hand side, you'll see a sandwich board, and that basically says we weren't able to stop illegal dumping, but I figured maybe we can try to organize it in a way to manage it. And that basically, that sign said, put your bulky items here, and that actually helped. Another idea is business recycling. This is just an example on the left, the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of process. Just kind of connect, you know, free site visit would be kind of like with the multi-units, going out there and seeing what they need help with. the money, I'm not sure if we'll deal with that, but then the next one would be relaunch, but we can certainly, one thing that maybe the fund can be used for is developing, these are posters, stickers in the middle that you put on the containers to kind of help either the back end or the front end of the store help divert trash. Another item is, actually, I am running out of time, I see. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to all of these. So I do have a few more left, and hopefully next month we can finish up the slides. And then, because we'll have Conrad from Republic Service talk about the flexible bottle pilot project. So if there isn't any dire questions, I'll turn it over to the chair.
Members of the commission, do you have questions on this additional material that's been presented to us? And I do wish you were here because we've got some great brochures and stickers, but I'll show them up here to at some time in the future, I'm sure Sarah would be happy to have a chance to let you look at them offline. So comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, just a comment that's a pretty impressive presentation. Thanks for joining us. That's a lot of good stuff. I think a lot of opportunity for the city of Meridian. As far as the grants, and we talked a little bit about the reduction. I'm kind of thinking that we generate the funds through recycling material. So to me, it seems reasonable that those funds would then take advantage of that recycled material or in some way, and then encourage it some more. I think we also label, when we send out the community, we have some label branding that goes with swag, our program. I'm not sure whether it's, you never turn away a program if we had extra money and there was a reduction. It seems like priority wise would be to take advantage of the money we generated. It was from recycling.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm having a terrible time hearing. Could the commissioner speak right into the mic, please?
Yes. Yeah, I was just mentioning that I would kind of lean towards making recycling or use of recycled materials kind of a priority over the reduction, even though it should still be an option, just a higher priority, only because that's how the money is generated. And it's hard to show nothing to the community as in a reduction, but you know what I mean? And as part of that, give back to the community, and it is called the recycling fund. That's just my take.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman.
Sayard, I loved all these ideas. I've just been blown away. I thought they were amazing. And I love that these projects are community wide. I was really excited about, especially multifamily. If we could use funds to get multifamily recycling kicked off, I mean, that would be a huge amount of progress for us. So look forward to hearing more, but I thought all these ideas were amazing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also love a lot of these ideas, really exciting stuff. With the community recycling fund being around $40,000, I'm not sure, dollar wise implementation costs and so forth. Should we focus on 2 or 3 items or something like that? So kind of getting a sense of costs and ongoing costs if we want to keep up in future years, what would that require? Those kinds of things. So that's probably a good topic as we continue the discussion in the future. And I'll just add, I'm also super excited about multifamily. As an apartment dweller myself, where I live, there is no recycling option, and the contamination, bulky trash sitting, outside the bins and so forth is a problem in every apartment I've lived in Meridian. So, and there have been a few. So yeah, anything we can do around that aspect, I'm excited about.
Mr. Chair, I also am, when I saw some of these ideas are really, really great. And being that she's had experience in all this, all the different programs, along with everyone else, I'm the multifamily things, incredible. I work in the building industry, and I know that there's a massive amount of apartments going up. So that's kind of exciting. And I also had a question for Sayard. Are these materials that you have, are they going to be there? Like, could I stop in tomorrow and just take a glance at them?
Yeah, they're actually just in my office. I brought them in for show and tell. So yep, they are here. All of them are.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop in tomorrow.
I'll be here.
Perfect.
Second floor, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there seems to be a lot of interest in the multi-unit, which has been an issue that we've been aware of. Perhaps one takeaway, if the members agree, is that Sarah could look at some costing as to what the funds could be used towards, and specifically in our market, how much would it cost if we provided the blue bins, the signage, the various options, and could be that is one item that we can be prepared to present back in January.
Thank you, Joanna. Obviously, it's also appropriate to continue the subject until next month and give staff some time to go ahead and do just as was suggested, but the commission is definitely free to do as they see. Further comments or questions at this time? Very good. Seeing that there's no motions having been made, then I think I will take it that the commission would like to go ahead and have staff go ahead and flesh out some of these items that have been discussed to give us some costs and some idea of the amount of effort that would be necessary to go ahead and pursue them. Is there any other direction that any of the commissioners want to give to staff before we move from this subject this month?
I have a quick thing. I was wondering if you want, as in, Joanna's going to send her, I could send that PowerPoint with some notes of the last few slides. So then you can have a chance to look at ideas. And then when we come back for next month, maybe, be ready to discuss a few that you'd be interested, if you're interested in going forward to use the funds, so basically have two, so we have the grant side and then this, other side, if you wanted to use the funds.
I'm sure that'd be appreciated. Please proceed with that. Very good. With that, then we'll move on to the next item, which moves us into new business. And this is to get an update on the water bottle bin pilot program report, also known as the Squishy Water Bottle Project. Let's see, Conrad, yes, Conrad, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good to see everyone again. Can you hear me okay? Great. Yes, so first of all, my name's Conrad McDaniel. I work for Republic Services located at 2130 West Franklin Road in Meridian. And that is where my presentation is going to take us today. So at this time, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and go to the prepared PowerPoint, and is that pulling up for everyone? Thumbs up? Okay, thank you. Oh, I gotta move this green bar here. Apologize. Okay. Before I get started, here's kind of my outline for the day, but I would like to do a little quick, brief history lesson on what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. It is the plastic water bottle drop site located at the Meridian Transfer Station. And it's their sole purpose to collect squishy water bottles. By squishy water bottles, I mean basically your brand name, store purchased water bottles. I don't want to pick on anybody, but you could probably think of a few stores that will sell 24 water bottles for $2. And the reason they do that, they can do that, is because how cheaply the bottle is made. And you'll know when you have one because without any pressure, it seems to crush in your hands. And so that goes back to the ban on plastics. I think that was 2017, 2018 from China. It was more of a ban on recycling contamination, but really driven by plastics. And one of the big problems with plastic water bottles is the bottle itself is great for recycling, but these cheap ones, when they're compacted into a truck for recycling with commingle, when they hit the sorting floor and the sorting line, they're not easily pulled out and separated. What ends up with those is they're recognized pretty much as thin as paper. So they get in with the paper and can contaminate the paper commodity. And then at the end of the line, paper mills don't want the recycled paper because it has too much plastic in it. They can't do anything with it. So there was a big ban and shift on plastics that you could only recycle number one, number two, high quality rigid plastic bottles and jugs, with the exception of squishy water bottles. So that's where we find ourselves. Like I said, the water bottle itself is great for recycling. It's great plastic, but it needs to be isolated. And so that's where this pilot program came into place, where we were to drop off a 10-yard roll-off dumpster at the recycling center there at the Meridian Transfer Station. And its intention was to only collect water bottles, squishy water bottles at that. So to give you an idea, isolate it by itself as a separate commodity, just like we do with cans there, just like we do with glass and cardboard and mixed paper. So it's its own standalone container to collect plastic bottles. And it's coming up on a year that it's been out there for the public to drop plastic bottles for free. And it's time to review the results and put forward to the commission on where we go from here with this program. Now I will proceed at this point. Okay, I do know how to work this. Here is the tonnage report on that plastics container in 10-yard. You can see the haul dates there. Just like aluminum cans, it takes a while to collect enough plastic bottles to make it worth hauling. So we've identified 5 hauls for this 10-yard container. And the first one, just a couple weeks into it, collected enough contamination to be considered a trash container, beyond the point of going through and pulling out all the contamination and saving the plastic water bottles. It was deemed unrecoverable and had to be disposed of as landfill material. And so that was just like any learning curve. That was right out of the gate. First couple weeks, it was beyond repair. But we stuck with it, dumped out, start over, and then by just about Christmas Eve, we had a haul that was clean enough to take to Western Recycling. And you can see it didn't weigh a whole lot. You would expect it not to weigh much, being just water bottles, or mostly water bottles. Just under 0.2 of a ton there. Then after New Year's, it seemed like it was contaminated again, but this time you can see the difference in weight between the 0.27 on the first contaminated haul and the 0.11 on the second contaminated haul. And I think we just recognized it early enough before it filled up and got too dirty, like it did on that first haul. So we were able to stop it and clean it out and restart for water bottle recycling again. And then March 2nd, so just under 2 months there, it filled up with plastic water bottles enough to necessitate a haul. And then I will show in future slides right after that haul on March 2nd, it took until July, late July, but it was so much cleaner because what happened here at the end of March, new signage went up, and I'll get to that. In fact, Sayard's last slide gave you a preview, but we made it more clear to the public and didn't just redo the plastics bottle only box, but that whole recycling center, which is pretty neat. And I'll get to that here shortly. But what you see there is a good solid more than 4 months to fill up the plastics bottle 10-yard, which was hauled to Western and disposed of for 0.17 tons. So there you get all the totals there at the bottom. I won't spend much time at that. You might have had enough time to look at it while I was going on. So we'll just move on. Here is a picture from last week, actually. Yeah, exactly last week. And this is a look inside the 10-yard. And on the left-hand side, it looks like it's almost full, but you can see that's by the door, and that's most likely the easiest place people put it in. And if you level it off a little bit, it wouldn't look so full, but it's very clean. In fact, I've looked at this picture numerous of times, and it wasn't until today that I found 2 pieces of contamination on this side. One right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but in the center of the picture, there's a clamshell and a second clamshell here. We don't want that in the plastic stream, but you'll also notice a whole bunch of milk jugs, which are great for recycling, and they can be in here, but really the intention is squishy water bottles. So like this Arrowhead water bottle, and looks like maybe some Albertsons or Kirkland brand water bottles. That's what it's really intended for. But still, overall, looking at this, I've maybe seen 1% contamination. Now let's take a look at the other side of this roll-off. Same day, just a different look. In fact, it's like we're swinging our head to the right here. And there's a look at the back of the bin, and I identify at least 3 bags, if you can see my mouse, here against the wall. Here's 1 bag, a second bag, a third one that's gray, and possibly a 4th one behind that. And my assumption is that they are full of plastics, hopefully water bottles, but definitely plastic bags, which we don't want combined in the recycling system at all. So I'm guessing that this customer or customers realized it was plastics and noticed that they were the only ones with plastic bags and tried to throw it towards the end of the container as to make it easy to pull out. But really, I think what could have helped here is catching the customer with either in person or signage and saying, hey, please shake your materials out there loose like the rest of the stuff and take the bags back home and put it in the trash, please. So I think that's one misstep. I know early on we were getting a lot of cardboard and cans and other traditional recycled material in here. And That's since cleaned up for the most part. I don't see anything in here that's not plastic. Although the container was meant for just bottles, and it's maybe 70% bottles. I don't, but pretty clean. Here's some comments, feedback that I've received and observed from the customer. There's still confusion out there, overall idea of what is recyclable plastic. We have a lot of new folks in town that bring their way of doing things with them to the Treasure Valley, and that's no longer applicable for them necessarily. There are those that maybe missed the plastics ban and still are thinking 1 through 7. So there's still those out there that want to try and do the right thing, and they think they're doing the right thing by recycling everything they assume is recyclable. From the Republic staff, we're pretty busy out there, not able to full-time monitor and clean up contamination and help educate, but we do try and catch them when we can and ask them, please shake out your materials, or please put your cardboard in the container that's next to it. Please put your glass in the container. Take your trash and styrofoam to the transfer station, dispose of it with the rest of the waste. So we do what we can, but we're not able to be out there for the whole business day. The material recovery facility, or Western Recycling, this is kind of a new thing for them, having sold commodities come to them after so many years of commingle hauls day after day being dropped there. So we're still working on the communication with them to identify when a truck with a 10-yard is coming in with just plastic or just cardboard, just cans, to make sure it's handled properly. Not that it's handled improperly, because either way it's going to end up on the commingle recycling floor. Either that or a container like this should go to a baler, which means that the material's already sorted out, it's ready to be baled and put on the shipping line. So if it goes the way we design it and draw it up, it should skip the step of being sorted manually or through the machines. It should be clean enough to be tipped right there at the Western baler and packaged for shipment. Here's a look at the new and improved recycling facility, which was renovated March 25th. I think I got the final word that we were ready to go with it. And you can see 5 containers there. There's a 6th one, even more to the left, that I couldn't get in the frame, for glass, and then 2 cardboard containers, the mixed paper there in the middle, and in magenta is the squishy water bottle box, and to the right of that is aluminum cans. The one thing I kind of get from this is if I'm new to the recycle center, I see plastic bottles and cans there on the building, the sign. And that might be a little confusing. Obviously, we've run out of buildings to move that to the right, but maybe we can think of something. Other than that, it's pretty obvious if you're looking at the containers. I can see from here the magenta sign with the white water bottles, and I can read the cans there to the right of that. So I don't think the 2 posters on the wall is super confusing, but it could be tripping up some people. There's a close-up of that. And close up on the squishy water bottle. And we do have there in smaller print under the water bottle is ask for no other plastic permitted. No garbage sign to the right. So we are trying to stress squishy water bottles. Outreach, a lot of it's word of mouth. I don't think there's an actual advertising budget for this. So word of mouth of those that we are able to contact in the recycle center. We don't want just anybody to come use this either. It is open to the public. We're not going to stop anyone, but we want those that really care and really focused and understand about recycling and the importance of keeping it clean. Because it's not going to work if it gets dirty or is misused, just like the two trash hauls we had when this started. So it's important to make sure we're bringing in the right people to use it and educating those that want to use it but don't quite yet know how. So word of mouth is a big one. Again, update on the signage and direct education between our staff and the public. When this launched, and maybe Rochelle or Tom both can correct me here, but I believe there is an article in the Meridian newsletter that went out notifying people that this is now available to the public and part of the free of charge recycling drop-off site. And then TTT for Trash Talk Tom. I'm not sure, but I imagine he probably did an episode on this to get that launched. But that's the outreach that went into it. And then here's the cost. So we had the 5 hauls and the cost per haul, the rental of the container totaling just over $1,600. And with that, I will say thank you for your time and send it back to Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have questions or comments to Conrad on the material that he has presented?
Mr. Chair, Conrad, so I think I understand from what you explained, having the water bottles and the milk jugs mixed together is not a problem for Western. They don't need to sort those out from the 2 types of plastics. They just bail them and send them off to the same place.
Right. Yep. So no, in a more perfect world, we would allow squishy water bottles in with the 1s and 2s. The problem is that those get flattened and they're mixed in with the paper. So we need to find a way to pull those out and eventually put them back in with the 1s and 2s that are more rigid and can survive that process. Does that answer your question,
Yes.
Commissioner Larson?
It does. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Rochelle, and I just wanted to add to that conversation. I was about to come clean and where those milk jugs came from. We have a lot of multifamily folks that use the transfer station, and we used to have a plastics container, just general plastics, number 1 and 2 bottles and jugs, and it was always contaminated with plastic films and plastic bags and bubble wrap and all kinds of stuff. And so when we pulled that back and we finally stopped taking plastic altogether because it was always contaminated, when we relaunched and had the squishy water bottles only, it was perfect. And I mean, we had some stumbles at first with trash, but then it got cleaned up and it's been perfect ever since. But since that time, when I've been out there, I've been approached by people saying, I live in a multifamily complex and I don't have access to recycling. Is it okay if I put my plastic milk jugs in here? And I would, always say, well, it's really designed for this, but there's no harm in putting them in. So probably the 10 people I've talked to about sneaking in milk jugs, I'm sure they're responsible for adding those. They probably never knew we were going to go in and take pictures. But anyway, I think that it's tricky because when we open it up to all residential plastics, we had a lot of contamination. So we're seeing much cleaner stream now, but there is an interest from people living in multifamily complexes to recycle. So I have given the green light to a few of those folks. So I'm sure that's where those jugs are coming from.
Thank you, Rochelle. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman.
It sure seems like at some point a volunteer program or something with kind of like the Boise thing of recycling ambassadors or something is needed. if it's possible to stand something like that up, just so there could be some additional resources to help guide people. Just thought that kind of seems like there's a real need there still.
Mr. Chairman,
Rand.
just an observation. If we feel that it is critical that we are involved in the recycling of plastics, that may be the way to handle both the economics and it just seems to me our biggest problem is the front end, is having the proper plastics delivered to Republic in the proper format. The milk jugs separated from the Coca-Cola bottles with the caps taken off, what have you. And that's a lot of labor. I wonder if we could find a way to reduce the labor expense on Republic's side, but put it on the collector of those side. I don't think any of you are old enough to remember the days when we used to, everything was in Coca-Colas and all were in bottles and glass bottles, and we would collect the bottles up as kids, whether the consumer or whether the retailer, they collected a penny, 2 penny deposit. The deposits were submitted to the city, the state, whatever. Those funds were then used to pay the persons who collected those and turned them in, Boy Scouts, clubs, organizations, individuals, so that on a certain day of the week, on Saturdays, people were bringing just thousands of tin cans and what have you to one location already sorted. And then all it was a matter of counting out the number of bottles or weighing out the amount of tin cans, compensated those folks on the spot. And you already had them sorted. You put them into the right big hauler right there on the spot, rather than having to have any contaminated ones at all. I don't know what the complications are on the deposit idea, but a slew of states do it, or organizations. And it wouldn't be a problem even if people out of Meridian brought cans to Meridian. We're doing the environment good by pulling these out of our landfill and maybe even using some of our recycle funds to help pay for this. Might be better to have more people collecting and properly sorting and delivering to Republic and find a way to make it attractive. I don't know, maybe it's something we ought to study.
Mr. Chair, tagging on what he mentioned about different states doing that, a state that I lived in for several years, they do that, and it was 5 cents for a Coca-Cola bottle and then 10 cents for a 2-liter bottle. So every single time you bought, from 7-Eleven or wherever, from the grocery store, you paid that.
Mr. Chairman.
Rochelle.
Hi, this is Rochelle. So actually in the past, those are called bottle bills and are passed state by state. And, we've had bottle bill legislation brought forth even as like early as the late 70s here. And so far it's come really close to passing, but it's state by state that states have to decide if they want to add a deposit and then have people get the deposit back. And so it is something that we can look at doing again. I mean, there might be interest now in doing that. I think it was very close in the 70s. And I think there was another one in the early 90s brought forward. And it generally, it won't work. It can't be done just regionally like in Meridian or Treasure Valley. It has to be done statewide with a bottle bill. But that's something that we can look at, as far as what was done in the past. And, we work with a lobbyist at the State House, and that's something maybe we can talk with our lobbyist about and say, hey, is it time again to bring one forward? And if people are paying a deposit, they like to get that back. So that's something we can definitely look into if there's interest from SWAC. We'd be happy to bring that forward again.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Chairman, members of the commission, yeah, I would echo what Rochelle said. I mean, this would have to be a statewide program. It could not be individualized by cities. A few years ago, I think it was Haley or McCall tried to prohibit plastic bags and the state came and preempted it. So it definitely is a statewide discussion. I don't have a clue what the legislature would think of that, but certainly it's a worthy conversation. I think there's data to support the value of it. I think there's certainly other states that do it, that find a value in it. So, I mean, I think that's a fair route to consider having that conversation, but that's where it would have to be. It'd have to be at the state.
It's a huge incentive for people to do that. And you'll see, I mean, each individual home where it came from, they would have garbage bags full and they would save them in their garage and then save them all up and take a big truckload in for, they had outside of grocery stores, they had little machines that you could put individual bottles in and get your money back, or you could take them to a waste facility.
Commissioner Nelson, did you want to go ahead and speak to the subject?
I think the things I was going to discuss have already been discussed. Everyone was on the same page, it sounded like. Yeah, tackling a statewide initiative to the legislation. I don't know who would start that, if Republic had any desire to do that, or if it's what kind of organization would do that. I don't know if that's outside of our scope.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Elson, what we've typically done is look to states where those have worked successfully. And generally, that's not to the West Coast. Here in Idaho, we generally look to other states in the Midwest or, other places like similar to Idaho that have passed that legislation. And then we just model legislation after that. So getting it passed and getting it implemented are two different things. And so, I mean, we'd have to look at anytime you bring a legislation forward, there's a portion of that legislation, I guess, that's brought forward where they want to know the financial impact, and that's something we'd have to, look at. So I mean, we're happy to have a hand in it, but it's much bigger than our SWAC or our local Republic office. We're happy to start that conversation and pull sample legislation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would also tend to agree that it's a very big challenge in Idaho and is in other Western states when you have such diverse populations geographically. And you have a number of very small mom and pop haulers in a lot of areas around the state that probably don't have the ability to do that. So I don't know. I definitely think it's worth the conversation. I just don't know if you're going to hit a lot of roadblocks or challenges because of the way our state's laid out, the way a lot of these things are being managed statewide, county by county. Every county is responsible for managing these things. So I don't know how far that'd go, but it's certainly worthy to ask that question and to see if there's any appetite for that. As many of you know that have worked with the legislature, nothing happens quickly. It takes a number of years sometimes to push that idea forward. So there's certainly no reason not to have the conversation, but there's going to be challenges.
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman.
Certainly, I would think if we could leverage Republic's lobbyists, then the SWAC could send a letter, and I would imagine City Council would consider sending a letter. And we have a lobbyist with the Association of Idaho Cities as well. So it seems like a great future discussion that we should have, there are different things we could do to try to do that.
Conrad, you've been patient. I see you've got your hand raised, so go ahead and speak.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I do have another commitment. So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I very much appreciate your time. But I was wondering if there's anything else, please feel free to ask Rochelle or send me an email.
Thank you, Conrad.
Thank you.
I will say that this is Sayard with the city, that Oregon, well, is pretty robust in their bottle bill. They were the first ones in the 70s to do it, and they've gone strong the whole time. They've raised it to 10 cents now. in most states that do a bottle bill, it's actually, the hauler really, well, it's involved, but you usually, traditionally, you bring the deposit back to the grocery stores. And then the grocery stores have to do staffing and stuff like that. I don't know if California changed, but I know Oregon, not that long ago, I think in 2000, I think it was 15, they actually got away from that, and that's what the grocery stores preferred. And they actually set up, run, I think by the state, these own separate buildings that you would bring your deposit to, and then they had staff there, and that seemed to help out a lot more. But so there's several different models that go on, but yeah, this is certainly a statewide talk. However, in Minnesota, where I lived, they don't have a bottle deposit program, but they do have what, I forget who it was, but who was talking about where it was Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and they would have a roll off or a big container out somewhere, usually at the fire department, and individuals would go there and drop off their aluminum cans. And then the hauler would pick those up, and then some of the proceeds would go to that individual group. So there's that model that would probably, in the short run, work here, since we don't have a bottle deposit bill yet in place.
Additional comments or questions? Joanna.
Mr. Chair. Just to redirect the conversation back to the pilot project, it is complete. The funding that we had set aside was for fiscal year 21, and the invoice has been processed, but there are no funds set aside at this point to continue the project. And I believe it would be prudent for SWAC to discuss their thoughts on continuing the project. It could be something that the community fund pays for, or else we have to look for alternative methods of paying for this program.
Thank you, Joanna.
I will add that I think it's a good program, and I think, looking at the data, that once you guys did more outreach in those signs, that the contamination rate did decline. I think with more outreach, for this coming year, and then decide after that, what should be done, that might be something to consider, is trying one more time with more outreach and education along those lines.
Thank you, Sayard.
Mr. Chair, Joanna, could you clarify for me the costs that were paid and who paid them? Was this original funding just for signage? Who paid the cost of the hauling, the $1,600 that Conrad was talking about? What kind of costs are we talking about here?
Mr. Chair and Larson, the fund was for the hauling and the container rent. It was originally to be a 6-month project. It got off to the rocky start that Conrad was describing, and we continued it. The funds that were originally put aside were, I want to say 2,500. I would have to check on that exactly. So we did not spend the entire amount that was anticipated, but the funds again were only available for fiscal year 21.
Understand that. Thank you so much. So, and the 2,500 was provided by the City of Meridian for that project, or provided by the Community Recycling Fund? Who provided that?
That was the Community Recycle Fund that paid for that.
Excellent. Thank you. So, sorry, Mr. Chair, Joanna. So, we're gonna have a little gap, perhaps, in timing. Well, maybe not if there's still dollars left, but if the program was not funded, Republic's action would be to remove the container and then possibly bring it back at some point if we allocated funding. I'm thinking that if we said yes to funding for another year, that would have to go through council and so forth, and we'd have a little gap. Again, asking a process question here.
Mr. Chairman and
Rochelle.
Mr. Larson. So I'd have to check on that. I don't have the authorization to just say, yeah, we donate that. It's historically one of the more expensive recyclable commodities to manage than the others. And so, and the cardboard, we donate that and then the revenue comes back to the city. And mixed paper, so we don't charge anything for the mixed paper. We put it out there so people can put their packaging there when they recycle their cardboard, because we know there's a lot of packaging that comes in there. So outside of the cardboard and the mixed paper, we have aluminum, which has not, that generally people don't fill that one up. I would be interesting to see, but we don't charge for that one. We're hoping that the cost of the aluminum would cover the program. And plastic is one that I'd have to check with our general manager, but I would say that's probably one that would go away just because we haven't had a great, before that one was all mixed plastics, it was really expensive to run and it was always landfilled. And this one just is higher maintenance. So, but we like to see durable programs. So can I get back to you next month when I check on that answer?
Sure.
This is paid really through, this one, we just sent an invoice. It's getting ready to run one more time in September. It'll run again right in the end of September. And so that would really close out this fiscal year. So, we would keep it on site until I can check into that and get back to you though.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can we see the slide again that has the costs on it, please?
Show the slide.
Thank you. So I was just trying to get a rough idea of if $2,500 was the correct level of funding. And initially, it looks like we hauled it more frequently because of the contamination problem that was discussed. But with one more haul to come, maybe $2,000 is the right level of funding to cover the year. And although I have strong feelings about squishy water bottles, I would nonetheless support continuing the program. I think the success of it has been building, and that's, at least some amount of water bottles that did not go to the landfill. And I think that's a good thing. So I would support that. And I'd make a motion to provide an additional $2,000 of funding for fiscal year 2022 out of the Community Recycling Fund to continue this program.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we allot $2,000 from the Community Recycling Fund to continue the squishy water bottle collection. Is there comment on the motion?
Mr. Chair,
Councilwoman.
just to check with Bill Neri, I think SWAC can authorize the funding. Is there any issue if we just provide council an update next week that this was funded?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no, that would probably be the way to go, because I think the only one that the council specifically comes back to either approve or deny are the Community Recycling Fund grants. But on this type of program, I don't think we've had the council approve the expenditure, but I think they definitely need to know what's happening. So I think that's fair.
Mr. Neri, Mr. Chair, actually, I do believe council has to approve a budget amendment
Oh, that's true.
in order to have the funds made accessible.
In the next budget, you're right, I apologize. So yeah, so they'll have to bring forth a budget amendment for the council to approve that, to add it to the 2022 budget, because it doesn't currently exist.
So, Mr. Chair,
Councilwoman.
what I would recommend is for SWAC to vote on it with a budget amendment to follow. And then I don't know, Bill, if I should sign it or whoever covers Public Works, but one of us will sign it and we'll just discuss it in the next 2 weeks.
Members of the commission, additional comments on the motion? Okay, to restate the motion, it is I guess to ask staff to put together the appropriate documentation so that we can go to council and go ahead and request $2,000 from the community recycling fund be set aside to go ahead and continue the squishy water bottle collection process. I don't think that's significantly different than what was actually on the table that we approved the $2,000. We wanted $2,000 from the community recycling fund to go ahead and go towards the squishy water bottle project. It's just the details of how it's going to be implemented. So I'll just go ahead and allow that to be voted on one last time. No comments. Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one final comment, if it's appropriate, to bring the squishy water bottle project back to SWAC at the right time for the 2023 budget. If we decide at that point we want to continue April or May, I'm not sure what the city budget timeline is. So, but to avoid an amendment process, and I would defer to staff on what the timing is, but that if it's continued success, we might want to continue funding it from the community recycling fund, so that just to consider it at the right time of year.
Mr. Chair,
Joanna.
Commissioner Larson. So it's about March or April that we have to have those numbers ready so that we can have it prepared in time for council. And earlier this year, we'd had such a, we hadn't had good results from the program yet. So we weren't able to do that. So yes, we can absolutely bring it back to SWAC in the spring to discuss and make sure that we're prepared to put that on the 2023 budget if that is the decision.
Fantastic. And my comment was not intended as a criticism in any way, just, just trying to think ahead to make it easy for staff and efficient and so forth. So.
Very good. So if staff would go ahead and take that to produce the appropriate documents, and then please keep me informed. I'll be more than happy to be at council when it goes before them. But up until that point, if I need to do anything from our side to help sign or process it, just ask. Okay, commissioners, we have finished all of the items that were on the agenda today. The next meeting is October 27th, and I don't have anything in particular that well, there's certainly that's nothing continued, and I don't really have any subjects that I'm focused on. So make sure if you've got a subject that you want us to go ahead and pick up and handle. Well, I guess I should say, maybe Sayard, you want to take obligation to go ahead and update us on your presentation next month?
Yeah, I'll send out email out the PowerPoint, and that would be a good time to kind of nail down, what your main overarching goal is of the grant part of the community fund, and if you are interested in, what type of other program you would want to fund as well. And then we can get the ball rolling on that during the winter time.
And as always, if you've got subjects that you think we need to pick up, go ahead and contact myself or Sayard. And when we start drafting the agenda in a couple of weeks, we'll fit things in. And with that, our business is complete, so I will go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. It is 5:45. Thank you for your extra dedication this month. I think we definitely had some great conversations, so thank you, and I'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.